Welcome back to show. Whoops, that was my last TV program. Well, welcome back to Here and Hereafter. With me today, and that's going to have to be corrected, with me today are two guests that you have seen if you've watched the program in the last maybe 4 months, I think. 4 months, a couple of months ago. With me today is Jenabeth Rush, and it is Joe Franke. And the interesting thing with both of them, when I interviewed them separately, was each one had told me that they were proteges of the Warrens as young folks. I mean, really young. The Warrens were the premier. He was a demonologist, and Lorraine, his wife, was a psychic medium. Was she a psychic medium? Yes. She had both the clairaudience and all. So I thought, this is interesting. These two have, and both of them had experiences. My only experience with anything moving was, as I said once before, when I was a young person and saw something coming at me that was against the law of physics and got hollered at by my mother because she thought I placed it there. And what are you going to say? It was a ghost. Oh, yeah, Casper, you know. But these have had in-depth experiences where they were able to recount on audio or video what was happening at the time. But the interesting thing is they were identified as young people by the Warrens, who the world knows the Warrens as people that should be in this profession in a helping way. So I'm going to let these two talk because I've been listening to them gab before the cameras started rolling, and it's very interesting stuff. So I introduce my friends over here, and you go.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm Joe Franke. I'm a chairman of the board and chief investigative officer for the Warren Legacy Foundation, which was formed in about 2014 with Chris McKinnell, my good friend, and the Warrens' grandson, the son of Judy, their only daughter. And I know that in conversations that I've had with Chris and Lorraine back in the day, this is after the release of the first Conjuring movie in 2013, Lorraine had talked about this organization to continue on with their legacy. Now, I would have always carried on with the work. I've been doing this since 1986. I was an 18-year-old right out of high school. In fact, in my lectures, I have a picture of my high school yearbook picture, just to say that's what I looked like back then when I had hair and, young.
Oh, but 86.
I remember when I was going to a lecture that the Warrens used to do. It was at the Holiday Inn in North Haven off exit 12, off 91. It's still there. It's called the Best Western now. But my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now of 32 years, come next month, said, hey, how about instead of going to the movies, we go see this lecture by the Warrens? Now, I had known who they were. I've seen them on television and radio and print media. We didn't have the internet back then. So I said, sure. So we went to the lecture, and I recall this fondly. I'm walking up to the table. Lorraine was there, selling the tickets or whatever. And she looked up at me. She looks like cocks her head to the side. She's like, honey, have we met before? And she's looking at me like, you know somebody, but you haven't seen them in years. Like, what is this person's name? And I said, no, Lorraine, we've never met, but I'm really excited to meet you and see the show. And she's like, I just can't place it. She goes, there's a reason why you're here tonight. She's like, make sure you come and see Ed and I after the show. Okay.
Does that sound familiar?
So yeah. I mean,
same thing with her.
So I'm sitting through the presentation. I don't even remember it. I was just like, what do you want to talk to me about? What's this all about? So we went to the diner, which is something that we always did. Anytime we finished a lecture or a case, we'd always convene at a diner and go over the events of the evening, and I've been to a few cases. So she was sitting across from me holding my hand, and she was reading my aura. Okay, now Jenna, I know you know what this means, but Lorraine was looking at my aura. She had the gift where she could see that supernatural glow. You could probably explain it better than me, but that emanates from all of us. Mm-hmm. And she said, I could tell by your aura and the colors. She's like, honey, you were meant to do this work. She said, would you like to come and work with us? So I was actually chosen. And I'm like, absolutely, yes, sure, right away. And then, the rest, as I say, is history. But, I wasn't sent on my first case for quite a number of years. And this is the time when the Southington case happened, the haunting in Connecticut. Mm-hmm. If you're familiar with the Southington house, I wasn't involved in that case directly because I remember Ed saying, he goes, "Hey kid," he used to call me kid. He's like, "Hey kid," he goes, I got a tough case up near where you live, because I live in Wallingford. And he said, "But you're not ready for it yet." And he's
now,
right.
I'm going to stop you right there for a second. You were only 16 or 17. They let you go on a case, correct?
Yes.
Scared the heck out of you.
Yeah,
correct?
they weren't with me, but they sent myself and another person up to a place in Tewksbury, Massachusetts, and we stayed overnight. And they were investigating separately, but sent us up, and it was young, didn't have the capability to.
And that freaked you out at that point in time. Yeah. So you backed off for how long did you back off for?
I probably didn't go back into going into investigating itself probably till just past few years, but always was developing my psychic abilities.
Okay.
I wish I had known, more protection.
We were just talking about protecting yourself when you use a Ouija board and stuff like that right before you came.
But as same as you, I was introduced to them through a mutual person, and they kind of took me under their wing, and we would go out to eat and talk, and we went to Dudleytown together and all kinds of things. So yeah.
Now, and Joe, you're working, I don't want to say at opposite ends of the spectrum. He's in active investigation, and you are right now trying to help people that have had a terrible loss to spiritually heal them. So Jenna went through a progression of helping professions before she got here, before she got her psychology degree, but always on that trajectory. And now it's helping people who have experienced, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you said helping people who have had loss, almost grieving, getting through, that there is something on the other side, connecting with the people they lost, because you can do it. You can do it yourself in some way. You're trying to train these people to how to connect.
Yeah, it's called induced after-death communication therapy. You have to be a trained therapist, and you have to be trained in a trauma therapy called EMDR. I do that, as well as I do investigations, but my approach is very different because I'm a therapist and I'm a healer. I don't just go and investigate. I also help the people that are in the buildings and help cleanse and clear, and also the land that's around.
Right.
So I make sure it's more of a therapeutic approach, not just investigation.
Right.
Trying to move them on.
Trying
to move whatever force is there. And in your case, priests do it, or the church will do it to try to move them on if there's a demonic.
It's funny you mention that. I don't look at myself as a ghost hunter. I'm a ghost helper.
So how do you?
With the aid of some very gifted psychics, I mean, we all have psychic ability to some degree. Mine's not as advanced, but I deal more with when things are really negative, and I don't like it. It's not something I enjoy. I remember lecturing once, and some guy in the front row was like, "Oh, that'd be really cool to get." I was picked up and thrown across the room.
Yeah, that's
when I was
not
23,
really cool.
24 years old. I was 350 pounds, weightlifter. That doesn't matter. Physical size and strength has nothing to do with this work.
And that was a demonic possession.
That was a
something
demonic
else would
case.
not hurt you. Yeah.
But we were, Ed sent us in there to gather evidence so we could bring to the church, to bring in Bishop McKenna. Have you met Bishop McKenna?
No.
Oh,
No,
okay.
I know
Robert
about
McKenna.
him. Yeah.
Well, matter of fact, we just had one 2 weeks ago, Friday. We were at the old train station in Wallingford, which is an office building now. And I was brought in, and there's a nice lady. I just met her. Her name is Tracy Moses. I don't know if you know the name. She's a very gifted medium, and she had noticed that there were 5 spirits in the basement area, and one.
And you don't have to tell us where, but in Connecticut and Massachusetts.
No, in Connecticut.
Connecticut.
It was in Connecticut.
Okay.
And I went down there with her, and I can feel things. If it's really bad, if there's something demonic there, which is very rare, I'll feel it. Just from experience, I'll feel it. You can feel the air, the electricity in the air, really, is something bad. And a lot of times you'll hear rappings and poundings. And in the case in Enfield, there was growling.
Why 5 in a basement? Why? I mean, were they buried on the ground?
They weren't. It had nothing to do with the building. I think they had been brought in through a portal. I haven't dug into it. This is only 2 weeks ago. But Tracy was saying that there's 4 individuals that I guess that were subordinate to this other individual in life. And he was a miserable SOB. Now, if you're in a miserable SOB in life, you could be in a miserable SOB in death.
Yeah, I don't think
right?
it's changed. I would hope you would. But
These 4 people were almost to the point of being held hostage or being held back from crossing over. They were afraid because this person, this other entity, which was earthbound, it wasn't a negative, it wasn't a non-human entity. And, of course, I just got, immediately I'm like, what gives you the right? So we went into the room there, and Tracy was able to help pass them over. Now, they didn't want to go because they were afraid. So I took my energy and I blocked this SOB. I said, you stay back. And then we crossed over these other souls, went into the light.
She still got the SOB in the basement.
Well, yeah, but then, and she was pretty upset and scared of it. And I said, let me talk to this thing. And I said, listen, I don't take the tough guy approach. I said, let us help you. Let us help you.
What was stopping him? Because he was mean? He thought he was going to get his?
He was afraid because he was such a jerk in life. I'm trying to watch my language. He was such a jerk in life that he was afraid of what he was going to face on the other side.
Yeah.
And then he broke down. And Tracy, with Tracy's help, she was able to bring his son over. He had a young son that passed away at the age of 10, 11 years old.
Oh, that's terrible, yeah.
And ever since that happened, he was just miserable. He was angry at the world.
Yeah.
And we were able to bring her son, and he took him over. And now, the following Friday, which was last Friday, I had an event there. It was for a raffle. I had 10 individuals. It was supposed to be a fun little investigation thing. I do that for the town as a fundraiser every year. And I knew this was going to happen. One of the individuals said, "Oh, why didn't you wait until this week?" Because it was the week before.
There's a way.
And I laughed. I said, I knew someone was going to ask that question.
Right.
I said, if we go into a place and there's someone looking for help or they're confused or whatever, we help them.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say, wait till next week, I'll be back.
Wait till my publicity op.
No, that's not. That's why I said I say I'm a ghost helper.
Yeah.
Not a ghost hunter.
Right.
These ghost hunters are these YouTubers, these urban explorers. I'm like, you're going out to these old, wrecked, abandoned buildings. I'm like, first of all, you got to be wary of your safety. Is the building, fall through a floor or a ceiling? I said, you might have someone living in there that doesn't like you and they attack you.
Or else even, derelicts who are in there making a home, you never know. But you had an example, and I remember you talking to me about going into that building in Suffield that the 3 men lived in. You did research in order to get them what was happening out. You might want to tell Joe about that. You had to actually research why it happened because they weren't moving on.
Well, I don't know if this is what you do, but I usually first research, try to get as much history of the building. Absolutely. Yep. And then in the case in Suffield, there was a murder there. There was, walls and furniture moving and all that.
Okay.
But I think just like what you said, it's that person was not a good person in this life.
So it was a human spirit.
Yeah,
Okay.
Definitely not a good person in
Right.
the next life. And just like in regular life, if we go through regular therapy and we're stuck or we're a jerk or whatever, we get stuck when we pass on. Same thing. But it's funny because I've done investigations at several restaurants, and I've had people say to me, "You can investigate all you want, don't get rid of the ghosts."
I've had the same thing happen.
I'm like,
I've had the same thing happen.
Wait a minute, because it's good advertising
I've had
for
people
them.
get mad at me for that.
Yeah, it's like, well, wait a minute. If the spirit wants to go, I'm going to help them.
Yeah. I mean, who wants to be stuck in a
God.
restaurant for the rest of their
It's like we were separated at
eternity?
birth.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's true.
I think the pitiful things, and when you watch any stories, is when you get a help me in the background or a child calling mom. That kills me. That kills me that person's asking for help, but these people, I haven't. Like when they're leaving the building, I'm going, well, they just asked for help. Why are you leaving now? Get somebody in to help or mom, kills me because I hate to think a child would be stuck on this side looking for, and I mean, from the old days, looking for mom. Mom's long gone. And, I keep thinking, why isn't there just a group that does that? Help me, I need help. And then they kind of wrap up and go home. It's like, how do you deal with that?
Sometimes with trauma with the living, and when there's trauma, like a traumatic death, there's a shatter, they call it, like in the shamanic work, is that your soul kind of splits, so they get stuck. Or even working with people that have trauma in this, in the living, people, they just have neuroscientifically, they have parts of their brain that just break. And so it's the same when someone passes. I really firmly believe that. So helping people here integrate and help heal, the same can happen where parts of their soul or spirit can be stuck here because it was a traumatic death.
Or they don't know they died yet. You hear that if you die very quickly, maybe you don't know you died yet.
Yeah, it all goes back, we were talking before, before we started the show about free will. And I firmly believe that we have our own free will here. We're all spirits right now. We're just in a physical shell, but when you pass over, you can, by your own free will, decide not to go. Whether you're scared, confused, you feel you have unfinished work here. Maybe you're like, I'm not dead,
It would be terrible if you were here, you're trying to talk to people, and you think you're still alive, and they don't hear you, see you, and you're. Maybe that's why they act out in houses.
Yeah, there was a recent tragedy like a week or so ago, and Tracy that I was working with mentioned that his spirit was in this particular building where he spent a lot of time when he was alive. And he knew he had died, and he was crying. He didn't want to be. He wasn't ready to die. 25 years old, and that kills me too.
Yeah, that would be hard to say.
I have twin daughters that are 25. My daughters knew him from around town. Yeah. It was a horrible motorcycle accident, and his soul wasn't ready to go. But unfortunately, tragic things happen. And I tell folks, some people ask me some very good questions when I lecture, and I'll say, it's a good question, but it's probably a question that can't get answered in this lifetime. We're not meant to know our future.
Oh, and I think not meant to know our future and not meant to know what it's like there. But have either of you read the account of the airplane that crashed in the Everglades? That was about 10 years ago.
JetBlue?
Yeah.
I remember.
Was it a JetBlue?
JetBlue.
And either the people died on impact, the pilot and the co-pilot died, but the people died they were eaten by alligators. So a horrible death. But what the people who were taking other flights on JetBlue in the next year didn't realize, and I didn't realize, they salvaged parts of that airplane. Very expensive. They salvaged parts and put it on another airplane, and the pilot kept showing up because he felt so guilty. It was a pilot error. Something about his knee knocked something, and they went down. His knee knocked something, which turned off something and said, you're too low, you're too low. And it was just a pilot error. And that pilot was seen walking around the aircraft that was used the old parts to check it out. Now he's walking around, and the people that flew with him saw him in one of the seats in the aircraft. He was so guilt-ridden. A lot of people died, and it was pilot error. So, and you think, oh God, he's paying that. He can't leave that alone.
He needs to be able to forgive himself.
He's trying to forgive himself, and it's like, and I'm not talking about goofballs. I mean, we talk about this, and I'm sure some people out there think, oh, woo-woo. I had somebody do that. I was sitting having a drink in the afternoon, talking to somebody, and a guy comes in to Three Figs up in Suffield, I'll say it. I love that place. And asked me what I did, because I was out. And I said, I just taped a show, what's it about? Told him. And so as I'm pulling out, as I leave, I'm pulling out of the driveway, he comes out and stands on the step and goes, woo. It's like mocking me. And I went, yeah, you'll find out someday.
Little does he know down the street was a real poltergeist
house. He's teasing me because he was funny, but I'm like, you'll find out someday. But that to me is the tragedy, to still feel that kind of guilt over death, that you still have to go and you still have to check that plane. And they were told, the people that saw him, don't report it because you'll be taken off of flight duty. They'll think you're crazy.
Well, you
have another pilot report that?
When you're saying that, which is fascinating, that, the DNA on that plane, the parts of that plane, And DNA
Because
is
they
our
used to
energy, so that's why you go, when I get an
Yeah.
antique, I cleanse it, like you don't know, or
Mm-hmm.
the antiques I have that are my grandmother and grandfather's, that their DNA's on it, so I feel like they're close to me.
Mm. Yeah.
Like that's what happens with land or with houses,
And it was a
residual
terrible
energy.
crash. And all I
Yeah.
remember is something, he turned to the co-pilot and his knee hit a switch. Oh my God.
I don't remember that story.
Try to,
That's interesting.
look
listening.
that up, Joe, because it was pilot error. And
That's too bad.
he's still around checking the plane that was used with the plane parts. And he was sitting in a seat on another JetBlue flight where a stewardess, flight attendant, I'm updating myself, who worked with him, you almost fainted. She sees him. She knows who he is. So to me, like the help me, their mama, or I'm still here trying to make up for killing by accident 200 people or whatever it was, that's very tragic to me. And I think, why aren't they just relieved of that? It wasn't his fault. You know what I mean? Why aren't souls relieved of that guilt they carry?
It's funny you mentioned what you said about mocking, because one of my famous lines is, we mock what we don't understand. And, I'll ask my audiences, because my lectures are more educational. I mean, I make them fun and engaging, but they're educational because I'm talking about real cases that I worked on, on my own with the Warrens, how I started, and I'll ask the audiences, how many people believe in, spirits, ghosts, life after death? And most people raise their hand, which is why they're
So it's becoming more accepted. You're saying that people
It
go,
is.
okay, I know what you're talking about because
It
I've
is.
seen it. Because people wouldn't talk about it before. Again, pilots who see unidentified flying up, they're told not to say anything because people will think they're crazy and be taken off of duty. I mean, now I think it's a little more open because the government has said, yeah, there's UAEs or whatever they call them out there now. But I think the first go-to with you, I know you had that experience when you were a kid, with you, with me, swearing I didn't do what happened at my house, people think that you're lying or that something wrong with you. It's way out there, left field.
Now, the University of Northern Texas is studying all of the induced after-death communication, and it's studying all of the psychic ability. Because like I said in our other show, we only use 5% of our conscious brain. The rest is subconscious, and that's where the psychic level is, and that's where we're in theta, which is when we're children, very, very open, very creative, very, very psychic. And then as our prefrontal cortex grows, then it gets schooled out and taught out and religious out, and it's like, oh no, our critical thinking comes in. But they're realizing that other part of our brain, that's where we can tap into.
But you saw people in your room as a child. You
I
pushed
believe,
it
yes.
down. Yeah, you pushed it down, right?
Well, as a child, I had a near-death experience,
Right.
and I believe that was
Okay,
an
okay.
angel, definitely. An
And
angel.
Joe, have you ever had anything? When did you start realizing you had these abilities to talk to somebody who's not here?
I'll tell you, I had something happen to me when I was 3.5 years old. I call it a divine experience. I was named after my maternal grandfather. So he was very proud of that, and he loved me, and I was very close to him, even though I was only a really young child. And he passed away. I was born in '68. He passed away in '71. So I remember it was November 8th, 1971. I think it was a Monday night. My parents were out in the living room watching Monday Night Football. And I had asked my mom, who's passed now a couple of years, but I asked her about 10 years ago, Mom, please put this story down in an email or something for me, because someday you're not going to be here.
Right.
And I wanted to have it straight from what happened.
Right.
So I guess as my mom tells the story, I woke up, or I didn't wake up, I was sleepwalking. I come running out into the living room. I'm like, what, Mommy? Someone called Joe. Someone called Joseph, And my parents kind of looked at each other and said, he's having a dream, he's sleepwalking. Puts me back into bed. A couple minutes later, same thing, I come out. Now I remember this. I don't remember coming out, but I remember what I
During the
heard.
conversation.
And so my mother puts me back into bed the second time, and the phone rings. It's my grandmother. She's like, I can't wake up your father. My grandfather had passed away. Now, my grandfather is a saint today. I have no doubt of that, because He was a very religious man, very devout. He would go to church almost every day. Before he'd go to like 5 o'clock mass or 5:30.
Wow.
He worked for the railroad in New Haven, so he'd go to church, mass before church.
Yeah.
But then, like on the weekends, he would come and pick me up and take me with him. I remember what I remember from those times is sitting in the front bench seat of his Impala, and I couldn't see over the dashboard. That's how far back my memory goes. But what I feel, and I know in my heart it's true, is I heard the Lord calling him because we had such a deep connection, such a close connection.
Had he just passed then?
He had passed, yeah. My grandmother tried to wake my grandfather up, called my mother, I can't wake up. What had happened was he had an easy chair in his bedroom. And every night before bed, he would read scripture. He would have the Bible. And what happened was my grandmother went up there and my grandfather had the Bible on his lap and she thought he was asleep. What we think happened is he fell asleep and had a heart attack in his sleep and passed away.
That's the way to go if you're going to do it.
And I am convinced, that's why I tell people, for me this was a divine experience because I know I heard the Lord calling him because I can hear the voice and I can see the light.
Yeah.
And say, Joseph, come with me.
Yeah.
Come with me. And I have that Bible to this day, is the very Bible I bring on every single case because I don't know what I'm going to get into.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just, whether they have a paranormal affliction or not. It's like you mentioned why before.
Yeah.
It's like, I know what happened. I know what you're telling me is happening. Let's figure out why. It's like root cause analysis kind of thing. But that was my first experience at 3.5 years old.
So
Fast forward 15 years, and that's when I met Ed and Lorraine.
And I think that people who have, like, you had the near death, you had your grandpa calling me, I had somebody pitching cans at me on a stairwell with nobody there. I think that opens you up. You go, okay, this isn't all there is. This can't be all there is. Like my mother-in-law passed away. Thank God it was 2 days in hospice and she was gone. She did suffer the year before that, before we realized what was wrong. We're out in Scranton area, and the whole family's in her little house, get ready for the funeral, and that we slept there that night. So people were in all the bedrooms, and my adult stepdaughter was on the couch in the parlor. And my mother-in-law's big thing was doing the dishes. If there was a cup in the sink, you know what I mean? That cup was, you just didn't leave anything. And she, my stepdaughter, bolted into the bedroom and woke myself and her father up because somebody was doing the dishes in the kitchen. I just said, she's saying goodbye, Lisa. You couldn't leave a crumb on the table or a dish on the, somebody she heard rattling around, and she freaked out. She stayed with us. She slept on the floor in the bedroom because she was so freaked out. But well, that's a good thing. It's your grandmother. Don't be so afraid. It's your grandmother.
Experiences. Lorraine told me once. I remember her telling me that your loved ones are always with you. She said, but sometimes they'll come to you in a dream because they don't want to freak you out.
Oh, yeah.
Like you wake up at 2 a.m, you're walking down the hallway, and Mom, geez, No, they'll come to you in a dream, and those dreams you remember. You have so many dreams you don't remember.
I always say that if the dream is as real as you and I looking at each other, that's a visitation. If it's like watching a movie, it's just a dream.
Yeah.
When my dad passed away, he died of a sudden heart attack, and he had open heart surgery. And fast forward, I'm with my husband, and we were trying to get pregnant, and nothing was happening. And talk about dreams. So I'm in Boston doing a training, and I went out to a pub, had a couple of beers. I'm like, I'm really tired. I'm going to sleep. In my dream, my dad comes to me. I'm like, Dad, when are you going to send me a baby? When are you going to send me a kid? And he smiles at me, and he takes his hand, and this little girl walks in front of him, and she smiles at me. He smiles at me, and I woke up and went, holy, you know what? I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
Right?
Where are you?
So that I knew it was a little girl.
That's so funny.
I knew it was a little girl. I went home, told my husband, I'm pregnant. It's a little girl. We had a bet.
No more beers for me.
No more beer.
Wow.
But here's the thing. When she's born, she has a scar from here to here, the same scar that my father had because of open heart surgery.
And so therefore it may be a reincarnation.
Well, I do call her Kenneth sometimes because she acts like him sometimes. She's stubborn sometimes. But literally she was born with that.
Yeah.
She's older now, but she still has the same scar, which was just amazing.
And your daughter's so beautiful too. She's just a beautiful kid. She looks
Yeah.
like she's a little blondie, right?
Yeah.
Look at her, how exotic she looks. She's got a little blondie kid. So, I believe in all that. And I think, I said to you last time, or maybe you, I can't remember, I think the veil is thinning. Maybe it's because more people believe that, we're not here. This isn't all there is. And I think we're developing as a people that this can't be all there is. There's got to be something beyond.
I just ask people to have an open mind. Because in the same audience, I'll ask, well, how many people don't believe in this stuff? And you usually get a couple of people that raise their hand.
But now that would have been so reversed, or they would have been afraid to raise their hand if they did.
Yeah,
in the old days.
for fear of ridicule. But I
right.
said, that's fine. We could still be friends. And sometimes people ask tough questions. I'm like, that's a good question. I don't really know the answer to that. I'm not afraid to say that.
Yeah.
I said, but you know what? I'm probably not meant to know that in this lifetime. Maybe when it's my time to go, maybe I'll find out on the other side. Wherever.
I hope we do. I'm looking forward to that exciting thing. But I'll tell you, my daughter, and I've said this on TV, I'm not ashamed of it. There's nothing to be ashamed of. I hope everybody who needs or has children who need mental health help get good help. It's very hard to find, but my daughter was in the mental health system for a long time and committed suicide at 34. My brother called me when I got home from her funeral. It was my only child, and said, "Don't do it," because I also was thinking about going. It's like, I just spent 15 years fighting for her to be here. I don't want to be here anymore. That night, I had a dream. I travel through Chicago all the time because of my job. And so I know all the terminals. That night, I had a dream. And it was me running to get to Gate H in Chicago because I knew my plane was leaving. And I'm running like heck. And I get there, and just as I get there, the gate closes. And I'm begging the stewardess. I'm saying, please, I got to get on that plane. And I could see that it was a small plane, a commuter plane. And she said, no, I can't let the gate open. I said, I'm so close. I can't do that. And as the pilot's leaving, he's going like this to me, and I said, I want to see your supervisor. What's your name? She said, my name is Joy, and this is not the plane that you're going to be getting on. You'll be getting on another one.
Wow.
So that was, very true. You'll get on another plane. Someday, you'll be getting on another plane.
When you talk about the veil becoming thinner, because our brains are also developing even now. So when I took a class at Harvard, there's a thing called mirror neurons, which is developing, our prefrontal lobes are developing as we develop from, and so we're becoming more psychic. We're becoming more in tune. Like with your husband and your wife, you may think of them and they pick up the phone, and sometimes we're just so connected. And so as we go on in time, our brains are becoming more developed.
So maybe that's it. Has either of you, because it happens all the time, I call it the fetch. Are you Irish? You part of Irish, Joe?
Yes.
Okay, it's called the fetch.
Quinn was my mother's maiden name.
Okay,
I'm
all
half
right, you
Irish.
are. Jenna, you're...
84%.
Really?
Yeah.
What? Who got under those covers? Because you're not Irish. Okay, remember you saying
I'm
that.
from,
the
Northern
Black Irish,
so
the Black Irish, yes.
yeah.
You're
Going
so-
there on the 30th.
And I'm half Irish, so I'll tell you this. It's called the fetch. I can't tell you how many times I said, gee, I wonder how Liz is doing. Ding, ding. There's Liz. It's amazing.
It happens to Laurel and I all the time. I'll go to call her. She's like, I just was dialing the number.
Yeah, it's
and vice
so
versa.
weird.
It happens
Yeah.
to us a lot.
It happens
Like,
when
that's scary.
I think of a patient I haven't seen in a while, and I go, uh-oh, I'm thinking of them. My spidey senses, and they'll text me or call me and say, hey, I need to do a session with you. And I'm like, I knew it. Or I'll say, hey, you're on my radar. What's going on? I think you need a session. They're like, how'd you know? I'm like, I just...
Well, I just had a friend of mine who was a buyer. I used to sell medical equipment, and she was a very close friend out in Ohio. And she was, a lot of people were not fond of her. I found her to be very serious, but very honest, and she'd tell you that. So I can tell you that when something is really bothering me, I get a text, and she'll say, how you doing? What's going on? What's wrong? Out of nowhere, So that's a good thing, though. That means we're developing as a people. Yes. Now, Joe, you got something coming up. When did you posted something coming up at the Apple House?
Yeah, the family. Now I haven't been to the home up to a couple weeks ago. The Sunday before Easter, I was there, I hadn't been up there in 16 years. I worked the case. It was a pretty bad case. Pretty rough poltergeist activity, a lot of that stuff. But the epicenter was the babies, the twins. Now, it was near and dear to my heart. I have twin daughters. They're going to be 25 next week, actually. But the girls were only a little over a year, I think. And, we dealt with a lot of activity up there, and I've got video footage of something coming out of the baby's crib. This is about as real as it gets. Well, out of the blue, the homeowner called me about 2 months ago or so. He's like, I've been thinking about you a lot lately, and I wanted to reach out. We're having more activity in the home, but...
And Joe, if you recall, that was about the time you and I talked, and I asked you about that.
Yeah, it was. Probably about the same time.
Yeah.
So I went up there, and I was only going to go visit for a few hours. I was there for like 13 hours.
Wow.
I got up there around noontime. I didn't leave till 1 in the morning. And, I had to drive home. It was about a 40-minute drive. And we just were catching up. And I got to see the girls. And one of the girls wasn't home. But the other daughter, she comes up, gives me a huge hug. And she's like, I felt like I've known you my whole life. I'm like, well, you kind of have. I just haven't seen you in 16 years. But, they asked me, because I guess they need to make money. And so they were monetizing. It's a duplex. So the family lives on one side. The other side of the house is vacant because they haven't been able to keep a tenant because of the activity. Tenants will last, I think the longest somebody lasted was 6 months. And they said just, the activity, the smells, the noises, it just drove them out. So what they do now is they're letting these paranormal investigators, and I use that term loosely. I'm not an investigator, I'm a researcher, like you mentioned. Because I do my research. I don't just go out there and fill up the mystery machine and, show up with a bunch of people and a bunch of cat balls and stuff.
Tripping over yourself.
No, that's not what I do. But so I sat out there. I'm sitting in the living room of the vacant side of the house, the side that they rent out. And it felt very loving, very warm. I didn't sense anything. Now, there could have been something hiding, but I didn't feel anything. And so they asked me if I would conduct a lecture at the house. I said, that's a unique thing where I would be actually speaking at the home where I caught the evidence that I'll show them, because I show this evidence at the lecture. So that's what we're doing now. It's actually supposed to be May 4th.
Okay, and you have that up on your site?
I posted on the Facebook and I posted on the Enfield forums.
Well, okay, tell everybody about your Facebook page so they can look for that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I only have a personal Facebook page, but if you need to reach out to me, you can go through the Warren Legacy Foundation. There's a Warren Legacy Foundation Facebook page, also WarrenLegacyFoundation.com. And, jfranke@warrenlegacy.com is my email. But Saturday, May 4th, we're doing an event. It's going to be 6 p.m. to midnight. It's going to be a fun thing.
I think it sounds fun.
And there's limited seats because you can only fit so many people.
Yeah, I can imagine it's in their house, right?
I think they're selling. They're taking care of all that. Selling 20 tickets, so you can fit 20 people in there comfortably. Yeah. I'm going to go through my history in the paranormal with in the rain and how I started and all this, and then I'm going to focus on the case. I call the Enfield haunting. It's not the Enfield Demon House. They don't even like that word, but I think the Animal Planet or Discovery Channel gave that.
Well, that's what they call it, yeah.
Yeah, they give it this, when you mention the name demon, it hits the algorithms.
Yeah, people freak people out.
Yeah, but people are fascinated by that.
Yeah.
It's sad to me that the name demon, this stuff is thrown around, exorcism, and these words are normalized now in conversation. Whereas before, somebody mentioned the name demon and people would just get scared. Well, you should be, if there's really a demon there. But people are like, oh, Joe, this ABC Paranormal came in and they said I have a demon in my house, and they ran out. They said, we're in over our head. We can't handle this, And I'm like, okay, I'll come over. Or sometimes I just talk to them on the phone. I'm like, look, rest assured, you don't have a demon here. I said, so I got to talk them back off the ledge. Say, I don't know if you even have a paranormal affliction here. So we ask them many questions like, how many TV shows do you watch? How many movies do you go to? Never, ever investigate your own home. We had one woman sent me some tapes where she's investigating, and she's got her 5-year-old daughter by her side. Mommy, who are you talking to? She's walking around saying, is there anybody here with me? Like, no. You don't do that.
Don't ask them to come on in if they're not here. Come on down.
And a lot of it's psychosomatic too. People like, oh yeah, we just watched, this ghost show. I don't even mention them, but we watched this YouTube guy we follow, and now I'm hearing noises, and we found anything from people having mice to
raccoons in the attic
or squirrels.
Right.
It's like I'm hearing the scratching, and so it's, and a lot of people, as you know, they're not lying. They're not making it up. They think they really feel they have a problem.
Right.
They really feel they have a problem. And I'll go out there and I'll have coffee with them at their table, and I'll say, I don't feel anything. I think you're good. I said, but I'll do this. I'll go around and I have some prayers. I have some blessings that I do, and it's more, I do. It's for real, but for them, it's something.
Right.
At least
it's almost like
Joe did something. And then a couple of weeks later, I'll talk to him like, I don't know what you did, but it's gone
it's
now.
Great.
They really didn't do anything.
Leave them a bottle of Monster spray. Send it water.
Well, there on the other spectrum, I had a case in it was another Enfield house, and I thought it's they're just having some psychological issues. We're just gonna talk to them. And there ended up being spirit there that needed to be healed and move on. Where I thought, I don't think so. But then when we started doing the investigation, we came within 2 hours. We had all this information, and it was like, wow, okay.
They were telling the truth. Bingo. Yeah. So what do you got lined up? I mean, I know you're starting your working now with your trauma, your spiritual trauma people. Are you giving classes, or is it one-on-one, or what are you?
I'm doing my induced after-death communication therapy. I'm still open to do investigations. People still call me to do healing investigations, whether it be houses or that. Doing some writing. And I'm just constantly working with a lot of my patients or people that come to help them develop their own psychic ability and tap into their own ability to reach their loved ones. And like you said, I think times are changing and people are searching, and they're not just wanting to just go to just church.
Right.
They want to
it's
really
not giving them what they're looking
feel
for.
strong within themselves, that they have peace and their own spirituality. So
how do people catch up with you then, if there's any interest in getting that with the audience?
Jenabeth Rush at AOL.com, and Jenabeth Rush, Psychotherapist on Facebook.
Okay.
And my number is 860-883-9512.
Well, I'm glad that you two just clicked. I'm so glad. And you compliment each other with what you do so well that wasn't a whole lot of crossover.
It's so cool though, to know that someone else has that history like I do.
And so young, and with the Warrens,
well,
that's
sure
what made me think.
we must have crossed paths at some time, but don't remember
Well, I
each
asked
other.
both of you that.
Well, I mean, maybe the names aren't recalled, but maybe we did way back in the day.
Oh, maybe.
We're talking 40 years ago.
Yeah.
I think they're watching out for us.
I don't remember what I did yesterday.
Probably, because they're both gone now. Jeez.
Yeah.
Oh, I know they're always with us.
Yeah.
They are. They are, because my heart tells me that.
Yeah.
My faith. I always say faith and fear can't coexist. If you have faith, you've got nothing to fear.
They were good people. They were good people, very concerned about the world,
Yeah, they were wonderful people. I mean, for those of us that knew them personally,
Plus,
I don't deal with them directly. Well, I do deal with them directly, but the haters out there. The people, the Warrens are frauds. Amityville was a fraud. I'm like, no, it wasn't. I actually lecture on Amityville, as it was told to me. I wasn't there. I was 6 years old at the time.
well, the interesting thing is that both of you had almost the same experience, like meeting them somewhere, and they identified you. Out of a crowd, they identified you. So, and you both had experiences young. So she saw, she was a psychic medium. I'm sure it was her that saw, bingo, there's two here,
I mean, I always say this is a vocation, not an occupation.
Yeah.
I don't charge for what I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I get paid for a fee when I lecture by the college or I do a lot of public libraries.
So I'm not going to be facetious about that, but who are you going to call Ghostbusters? We got two right here. And I'm sure there's somebody out there that's right now going, well, what's that shadow that just ran across my living room? So I thank you both for coming back. I mean, I had such a good time with both of you the first time. And we'll be talking, I'm sure. We do lunch with, and
definitely
up at the barn, and I watch you because I see you come up I see you come up and
Yeah,
like a feed.
I'm around.
And I do watch you because that's how I knew you were having a function, because you do pop up.
Yeah.
And I'm going to just put this out here. If either you ever want me to follow you around with a camera, I'd be happy to get some of my questions answered.
You're invited to ever come to the lectures. When I lecture at the libraries, they're free to the patrons.
Okay.
You
All
know,
right.
and
And you
anybody can come.
post them. You post them.
I
like,
usually
way
put them on
ahead of time?
Facebook. Yeah,
Okay.
I've got some coming up this
Okay.
summer.
Okay. Well, thank you guys again. I'm glad to see both of you. It's
you.
fun.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me back.
Well, I'm just glad because of what I saw and went through when I was younger. It's like, okay, there's two kindred souls. Don't have to worry about that, you know.
You got a friend in the business if you ever have a
I
problem.
do kindred souls. So, but thank you for coming. Actually, this is the last taping until October or September. So you'll be maybe seeing some reruns, but that's okay. Probably didn't catch them all, but look for us because it's always interesting. And if you have any questions, most of the time they get answered. So thank you for watching, and talk to you in October.